What if I told you that the most feared monster in Greek mythology was never a monster at all? What if the woman whose very gaze could turn you to stone was actually the victim of the greatest injustice ever recorded? Today, we're peeling back thousands of years of lies to uncover the truth about Medusa. And trust me, once you hear her real story, you'll never look at heroes and villains the same way again. In the pantheon of Greek mythology, few figures strike fear into hearts like Medusa, the Gorgon with snakes for hair and eyes that could petrify anyone who dared look directly at her. For centuries, she's been painted as a monster, a villain whose death was celebrated as heroic triumph. But what if everything we've been told is a lie?
Because here's what they don't want you to know. Medusa wasn't born a monster. She was created by gods who valued their pride over justice. She was destroyed by heroes who cared more about glory than truth. Her story isn't one of evil. It's one of the most devastating betrayals in all of mythology. And the more you dig into the real story, the more horrifying the truth becomes. Not because of what Medusa did, but because of what was done to her. Picture this, a young woman of extraordinary beauty, hair like spun gold catching sunlight, eyes that reflected the dawn sky. Medusa wasn't just beautiful, she was divinely beautiful. The kind of beauty that stopped conversations and started wars. She was a priestess in Athena's temple, a sacred virgin who had sworn her life to the goddess of wisdom and war. She lived in purity, in devotion, in peace. But her beauty was her doom.
Poseidon, god of the seas, ruler of earthquakes, brother to Zeus himself. He saw Medusa, and he wanted her. Not loved her, wanted her. Like a possession, like a prize to be claimed. And gods take what they want. The assault happened in Athena's own temple, the sacred space where Medusa served, the holy ground she had sworn to protect with her purity, was defiled by a god who couldn't control his urges. But here's where the story gets truly twisted. When Athena discovered what had happened in her temple, she was furious. Her sacred space had been violated. But instead of punishing Poseidon, her equal in power, her fellow god, she turned her wrath on the victim. Think about that for a second. A woman gets assaulted by a god, and the goddess punishes the woman. Athena's justice was swift and merciless. She transformed Medusa's beautiful hair into writhing snakes. She cursed her eyes so that anyone who looked into them would turn to stone. She made sure Medusa's face, once so beautiful it attracted a god's attention, would now be so hideous that no one could bear to look at it.
Medusa went from being a priestess to being a monster, from being protected to being hunted. Imagine waking up one day and discovering you could never look at another human being again, never touch another person, never have a conversation, never share a meal, never feel human connection. That was Medusa's life after the curse. She fled to the edges of the world, to caves where no one would accidentally stumble upon her. She didn't hunt humans, she hid from them. She didn't terrorize villages, she avoided them entirely. But the stories they tell about her, they say she was a monster who devoured innocent people. They say she was evil incarnate, hunting down heroes for sport. The truth? She was just trying to survive. Every person who turned to stone wasn't a victim of her bloodlust. They were warriors, treasure hunters, glory seekers who came looking for her. She never left her cave to hurt anyone. they came to her.
Enter Perseus, the supposed hero of our story. He was given a mission: bring back Medusa's head. Not to save anyone from her terror, she wasn't terrorizing anyone. Not to stop her evil deeds, she wasn't committing any. Just to bring back her head as a trophy. And because heroes need to win, the gods made sure Perseus had every possible advantage. Athena gave him a mirrored shield. Hermes gave him flying sandals. He got an invisibility cap, a divine sword, and detailed instructions on exactly how to kill her. This wasn't a fair fight. This was a divine assassination.
Perseus found Medusa in her cave. She was sleeping, no threat to anyone, just a cursed woman trying to rest. Using Athena's mirrored shield, he looked at her reflection instead of her face. While she slept, vulnerable and defenseless, he crept up and severed her head in one swift motion. No epic battle, no heroic struggle, just a man with god-tier weapons killing a sleeping woman who had never chosen to be what she became.
And when her blood hit the ground, it gave birth to Pegasus and the warrior Chrysaor, her children with Poseidon, the offspring of her assault, finally born at the moment of her death. Even in death, she was giving life to the world. But the story doesn't end with her death. Perseus used Medusa's severed head as a weapon, turning his enemies to stone. And eventually, Athena took that same head, the head of the woman she had cursed instead of protecting, and mounted it on her own shield. The woman who had been punished for being assaulted became the eternal guardian of the goddess who had failed to protect her. The victim became the weapon. So let me ask you again, who was the real monster in this story? Was it Medusa, who never chose to hurt anyone and only wanted to be left alone? Was it Poseidon, who used his divine power to assault a mortal woman? Was it Athena, who punished the victim instead of the perpetrator? Or was it Perseus, who killed a defenseless woman in her sleep and called it heroism?
The ancient Greeks told this story to teach lessons about divine justice and heroic virtue. But when you strip away the propaganda, what you find is a story about power, victim blaming, and how society creates monsters by refusing to protect the innocent. Medusa's story is ultimately about how the powerful write history, how victims get rebranded as villains, how injustice gets dressed up as justice. And maybe that's why her story still resonates today, because we still live in a world where victims are blamed, where power protects power, where the truth gets buried under more convenient narratives. Medusa wasn't a monster who deserved to die. She was a woman who deserved justice and got revenge mythology instead. She wasn't the villain of her story. She was the casualty of everyone else's choices. And perhaps that's her real power. Not the ability to turn people to stone, but the ability to make us question everything we think we know about heroes and villains. Sometimes the monster isn't the one with fangs and claws. Sometimes it's the one wearing a crown, or carrying a sword, or claiming to speak for the gods. So what do you think? After hearing the real story, do you see Medusa as a villain or as a victim? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective, hit that like button and share it with a friend who loves mythology. And subscribe for more stories that challenge everything you thought you knew. Until then, keep questioning the narratives you're told. The truth is always more complicated than the story.